Hello, and welcome to today's episode of 219 GreenConnect, where we explore topics about the environment and green living in Northwest Indiana. For past show archives, news, and upcoming events, please check out our website at 219greenconnect.com or join us on Facebook or Twitter. Our ID on both Facebook and Twitter is 219 GreenConnect. You can also subscribe to this podcast via iTunes. I'm your host, Kathy Sipple, and with me today I have Metro Recycling CEO, Neil Samahon. Thanks so much for joining me, Neil.
Good morning, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. And today we're going to be talking about beyond the basics of recycling. Everybody knows that, or I think most people that would be listening to this podcast would know that you can recycle things like, your plastic bottles and your newspaper and the things that go out in the blue bin to your roadside recycling. But your company actually goes a bit beyond that. Can you tell us a little bit about what types of items Metro Recycling recycles?
Sure. We predominantly take metal, steel, copper, brass, aluminum, in all various shapes or forms, aluminum cans, aluminum siding, steel grills, you name it. I mean, our biggest emphasis, I guess, and something we try to push, to the consumer is, think outside the blue box. It's a big campaign that both our recycling industry, trade organization has been pushing, as well as us as a company. We often think of doing our part when we recycle and taking our blue box to the corner on a weekly basis and having our aluminum cans and tin cans and maybe some newspaper in there. But really it's much, much more than that. There's so much around the house that you have that can be recycled that many people, perhaps don't think of because it's not something that they would typically put in their blue container. Pots and pans, if you have a cast aluminum grill, if you have projects around the house where you're, fixing siding, aluminum siding. Currently, even this past year, we've started taking vinyl siding as an item that can be recycled at our facility. We do accept paper, cardboard, newspaper, office paper, junk mail, that type of material as well. We are investigating handling more and more types of plastics, like I said, vinyl being one of them. And one thing that we look at in plastic is trying to find homes for some of the more obscure or not as common plastic items. Because, we would compete, I guess, with curbside if we're just trying to get plastic bottles and detergent bottles, milk bottles. We're trying to find sources for, whether it's buckets, whether it's plastic toys, that type of thing. Still working on it. One thing often with recycling is items may be recyclable, but you can't really recycle them unless there's a market for it. And that's sometimes half the battle is finding a constant consumer of, the various items. Our facilities are set up, to attempt to make it as easy as possible and convenient as possible, user-friendly, if you will, for the consumer. We like our facilities a bit spread out. So once you're in the facility, we have various bunkers, if you will, where you would put your larger metal, whether it's the siding, whether it's steel. And then we have our buyback buildings where you would take maybe the smaller items, your aluminum cans, the tin cans. If you have a few pounds of, copper, brass, the smaller items, you take it to our buyback building where we have multiple scales, where our personnel will assist in separating the material if you're not familiar with the types of material. And I should say that, the majority of the material that we take, we purchase. So when the consumer is bringing us their recyclables, we're actually paying them for whatever material they are bringing us. There's only a few items that we don't pay for. The bulk of the material that we take, we do purchase. So if they have the steel, the aluminum, I mean it's paying pretty decent money. I mean right now the markets are such that you're getting a decent amount of spending money, I guess, for recycling. So it's a win-win.
Well,
something for the environment and
certainly sounds like it. And you mentioned your locations and that they are, spread out and user-friendly. But let's tell people a little bit about where they can find the locations. I think probably it would be a good idea to mention your website and just tell people which, cities you're located in.
Sure. We have one facility in Illinois, in Blue Island, just south of the city of Chicago. We have another facility in Griffith, Indiana, near the Griffith Airport on Main Street, 1501 East Main Street. Then we have another facility there in Valparaiso, 2155 West Lincoln Way, which is right across from the Valparaiso compost site. Easily accessible. Valpo, that facility is open from 8 to 4:30 during the week, 8 to 1 on Saturdays. Our Griffith and Blue Island facilities are open 7 to 4:30 during the week and 7 to 1 o'clock on Saturdays. And again, once you arrive at our facilities, it's the facility is set up, user friendly. When I said spread out, it's more the facility in and of itself. So people aren't stumbling over one another. They're clean. I think if you visit our facilities, and if you've ever been to what you think of as an old scrapyard, I think people recognize that this is far from what they may envision as a scrapyard. Our website is www.wheredoirecycle.com.
Very good. Easy to remember.
Yeah, we thought so. Make it easy. Yeah. There's a lot of information, on that site as far as what materials we take, and some other informative items. We do also have a blog, which they can access through our website, and we'll have various topics on recycling, not just specific to materials that we take or metal, but also some other items of interest to people that are going to recycle. We wanted it to be somewhat of an informative site, generally speaking, in terms of recycling, not necessarily specific to metal recycling or recycling metal. We wanted it to be a little bit more informative. And we do also, talking about being informative, we do also offer visits to schools. We have an individual on staff that will come to schools and put on a educational program, and it's catered to the various age groups. So we're careful to not provide too much information to the age groups that you're going to bore quickly, and make it more fun. To getting more in depth to maybe classes that are a little further on, and that seems to have worked out well. We did a few last year. We're trying to promote more for this year. Again, just trying to get the whole message of recycling out. Certainly, all hopes is that as they grow up, they become customers of Metro Recycling. But ultimately, it's just to provide information and get as much out there as we can for recycling. It's such an important thing to do, and look at various different types of and forms of recycling. Again, thinking outside of the blue box, I don't think people realize to the extent of the impact of recycling other forms of recyclables takes, and the amount of energy savings that perhaps is provided. You put your glass in a container, you put it out for your recycling company to pick up, and that's great, and it should be done. But glass, recycled glass saves about 34% of the energy made up from raw material, whereas aluminum is 92%. So it shows just how important the energy savings aspect is to recycling, more than, again, what's just in the blue box. And fine, people put aluminum cans, but there's so much more aluminum around your house. Your old frying pan, odds are it's either going to be cast iron or cast aluminum. If you have copper, it's another significant energy saver to recycle versus mining for, in the raw material. You're saving something in the vicinity of 90% energy. So it's significant, it's important, and those are some of the things that, we need to get out. And we're no small business, or I should say no small industry. Actually, in the U.S., I think a few years ago, the scrap recycling industry, employed 138,000 individuals in this country, which is significant. This year, actually, in Indiana, it's close to 3,600 individuals that are employed in the recycling industry. So there's multiple benefits, I guess, to recycling. You're helping the environment, certainly. You're keeping the economy churning. It's pretty significant. So.
Right. Well, keeping things out of landfill is huge, and just like you said, reducing the amount of ore drilling throughout the world. There's a limited amount of some of these precious metals, and we just need to be better stewards, I think, of what the earth has already yielded to us. I watched
absolutely.
An interesting video sometime back. It was called The Story of Stuff. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it was kind of an animated short, and it just went through kind of how do we get stuff? Where does it go afterwards? And just want to get people thinking about, the stuff that comes into their lives and being a little bit more intentional about where it goes after it leaves, your home. So I think there are good choices. Curbside recycling certainly is very convenient. We encourage everybody to keep doing that, obviously. But if you've got something a little different, and it doesn't perhaps have a number stamped onto it, that's what I always do, is look at the bottom of my plastic, see if it's something that can go in the blue box. But for the type of things that you take, let's talk about that, because this is kind of for an advanced recycler. It sounds like they can go on your website, and let's say the name of the website one more time.
WhereDoIRecycle.com.
I just love that. That's such a good site, WhereDoIRecycle.com. And so you can find out not only where do you recycle, but I'd imagine it also gives you some tips for knowing what you can recycle. So
correct. Yes, it does.
What would I need to do to prepare? Like, let's say, I'm a homeowner, and what would be is there a typical person that brings, things to you? Like, let's say I just removed some copper pipes, and I'm putting in PVC pipe or something. So what would be my process to get that into you? How do I need to prepare to have a good experience?
Okay. Well, you don't have to do a lot of preparation to the material that you bring here. We will take care of that. All you need to do is get it here. Now, you can, to be better prepared, you can have your material separated. It will go much quicker. And that's something we definitely try to do, is try to get the experience, both enjoyable and, try to get individuals in and out as quickly as possible. But so if you have copper, if you have brass, if you have aluminum, if you have those items, perhaps separated, whether it's in a bag or small box, that would certainly make it easier, because then we can just put that item on the scale, weigh it, and, take the next item. If it is large items, let's say you have, large pieces of steel, a washer, dryer, refrigerator, you have it on the back of your pickup truck or small trailer, we would have a truck scale that you would pull onto. You'd pull onto the scale. We'd scale you in. We'd instruct you on where to go to take the material off. And then once you're finished, we have you go back across the scale so we can determine the weight. So if it's a large item, again, you don't have to do anything to it. You don't have to cut it any smaller. We'll have a spot for it. I mentioned refrigerator. Refrigerators have Freon in them, and obviously that's a big concern. Certainly we don't want people, breaking their Freon lines, outside of our facility. Certainly, we need to be careful when it's brought here. We've actually introduced a year or two ago the ability to bring your Freon-containing appliances to our facility, and we have 608 certified individuals here that can evacuate the Freon. So if you have a refrigerator, freezer, you don't have to worry about the Freon inside. We will actually evacuate that item here. We'll have a separate location to where you can set that off. Then maybe dump the rest of your material, and then we will, make sure that the Freon is evacuated in an environmentally friendly manner. And then, we'll pay you for the material. Now, within the last few years, there have been some regulations put upon us and, the general public as far as the information that's required for us to take from the individuals. And it's best that the consumer is made aware of those. Over the past several years, unfortunately, with the greater demand for recycled metal, has caused the price to increase, to at times in the past year's record levels. Unfortunately, making it very attractive for some individuals to steal metal. We've all heard the stories of vacant homes having their copper tubing or wire taken from them. Well, to prevent the thieves from attempting to sell the material, Illinois, Indiana, actually 49 of the 50 states have introduced laws to somewhat try to curb that behavior. Here in Indiana, we're required for every individual to take a government-issued photo ID, which primarily is an individual's driver's license. We scan their driver's license, again, as prescribed by the law. And then what we've tried to do is we do, build a database of the customer, so the next time they come in, all we need to do is pull their file up. We can identify the individual looking at our screen to make sure it matches the person that's bringing the material. So, we're not always asking for a driver's license unless it's expired. We also have to record the license plate number, the vehicle make, model, and year of the vehicle that was used to, bring in the material. And then the customer does also have to sign a form, pretty much stating that they are the rightful owner of the material that they're trying to recycle. And it becomes, a little concerning to individuals, but hopefully they understand that, if they have something stolen, from their home and that they, believe might have been taken to a scrapyard or facility such as ours, they can be rest assured that, when law enforcement gets here and they're looking into the crime, we pull up the records and can identify the person that has brought the material here. There isn't anybody that doesn't have to do this, so that we're not picking on any individual. We're not making a judgment on whether somebody looks like they're, the kind they would steal or not. It's just something that we have to do. And the other thing, too, is I would hope that individuals, upon going to our facilities and seeing the processes that we go through, and that we actually abide by the law, that they're dealing with, a scrap company that is reputable, whether it's adhering to the law and what's required of us, whether it's, the services that we're doing in providing free on evacuation. These are all things that are on one aspect, it's the law, it's what we have to do. But the other is just something that we want to do, regarding the free on. One additional law that was introduced this past July here in Indiana speaks specifically to air conditioners. The general public can no longer just bring in their old central air unit or components from their central air conditioning unit unless they can, provide proof of ownership, provide documentation that they're, switched out their current unit, somehow demonstrating that they're in fact replacing an air conditioning unit. There have been a rash of thefts over the last year of central units, larger air conditioning units. The only other individuals that we can take them from would be from HVAC contractors, and those individuals have to provide some information to us demonstrating that they are in fact in that trade. That they can, in fact, recycle those items. And again, it does become somewhat an issue for some people. But ultimately, again, if they really think about it, it's the right thing to do, and it, somewhat assures them that, again, they're dealing with a reputable company, but also that there are efforts being made to protect their belongings. Nobody is immune to the potential situation of having something stolen from them in terms of a recyclable item.
Right. Well, I can attest to the fact that these things do go missing. I used to be a realtor years ago, and it was very sad to be showing a house where you could tell that it had been sitting vacant for a while, and copper pipes were ripped out, the air conditioning unit was missing, and it was very destructive. So I can see why these laws would be in place to protect property owners. And a little bit of a hassle, but it sounds like with some proper preparation, getting your paperwork in order. And so if you're a homeowner and you're switching out your AC, is that something that the HVAC contractor generally gives you? Do they give you some kind of a paper?
Well, it could be. Sure, it could be as simple as the work order, the bill.
Okay.
Obviously would have the customer's name, their address, and obviously we're going to verify, that information when the individual's here to make sure everything matches. So it can be simple, just in the sense of make sure that you're keeping your, receipt, that you're paying your contractor with, and bring it in, and you should be fine.
Okay.
It's just, again, to remember that, we're trying to make sure that we have some of this information on the website. We're actually in the process of putting together videos, which is actually, geared towards each one of our facilities on what you can expect when you get here. To kind of give you a tour of each facility, the processes in which you would utilize our larger truck scale, the process to which you would use, when you have smaller items to our smaller scales, the process when you get paid, pretty much to try to get as much information out there as possible, prior to our facility. We've had, several customers ask, for that, and it would be helpful, and we're trying to respond. Again, the only way we're going to get people to continue to recycle or look at other, venues to recycle is try to make that experience as pleasant as possible. And again, one of the benefits of recycling metal and the material that you're bringing here is, the financial aspect. You're getting paid for the majority of material you bring here. Even cardboard we're paying for. Some grades of paper we pay for. So we try to make that process easy, enjoyable perhaps. Some customers like coming here just simply because they feel it's a field trip. And then also the benefit of the financial side of it. They can walk away with a few bucks. So. Well,
I do have a friend who moved into an old horse property, and they had to remove some farm fencing. They are very ecologically minded, and certainly would not be the people that would put it out at the curb. So they did investigate, found that they could bring it to your facility, and they did the truck scale process that you described, and they said it was very easy. And they were thrilled. I mean, the financial part was just, side benefit. They were trying to do the right thing, but, I don't recall. I think they said they might have come away with like $40 or something. And so they were just thrilled that, it got taken out of what would become, landfill kind of stuff. It was put to good use and would go into the right hands. So you did mention, there is a higher market for these metals these days. And can you give us some idea of where some of these materials would be likely to end up?
Where they would end up?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Who is purchasing?
Steel, sure. So the steel items, we would ship out of here, and that stays fairly local in the sense that, the Chicagoland area, there's several shredders. Who would then shred it and separate any steel and other contaminants. And that steel would go to typically some of your local steel mills in this general area in Indiana. Some of the heavier grades of steel, beams that you would see here are going to go straight from our facility to the local steel mills. But something that you've seen over the past number of years is really that the scrap business has become a large exporter. It used to be where, in the Midwest, typically your steel would stay in the Midwest and go to some of the local mills. East Coast, West Coast would have some mills, but then also send a material overseas. You're finding now that there's even some steel that's here in the Midwest that's scrap that may go overseas. But then, again, it's being sent to auto mills, auto facilities, factories, and used as such. Most of the aluminum that's brought to us is fairly regional. Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, further south, fairly regional for us. Stainless steel is pretty localized, but that can get exported as well once it's processed further. Copper is a huge item that gets exported. Some of our copper will stay here, going to some local mills, but some of the wire and other lower grade copper items typically will go overseas. China has become, for obvious reasons, a huge consumer of copper and various other metals, aluminum, steel, over the past years, and for obvious reasons. Just with the growth that's going there. So recycling is certainly, a global industry. Sourcing the metal is certainly a very localized thing, occurrence. We're buying it from households and contractors and such. And once we get it, though, it becomes very much a global industry. Obviously, again, like I said, shipping some stuff local, but a considerable amount, going overseas.
Great. Well, you mentioned aluminum, and that reminds me that you did give us a special coupon that we can feature on the 219 GreenConnect website. And so that coupon will actually entitle the bearer to 5 cents more per pound for aluminum cans. So if this is something that you've decided you're going to do and you want to make a go of it, please go ahead, download the coupon, and take that to Metro Recycling. Tell them you heard them on 219 GreenConnect. We'd love to know that our message is getting out and that podcast listeners are taking action. So do think outside the blue box and think about ways that can benefit the earth and your pocketbook. So this is certainly a good one. So you can visit 219greenconnect.com to get that coupon. And if you want to know more about where the locations are and you have questions, you can go to wheredoirecycle.com to learn more about Metro Recycling, their locations, and what you can recycle at each location. So again, I'm host Kathy Sipple, and today I've had with me the pleasure of speaking to CEO Neil Samahon from Metro Recycling. And we're just talking about ways to think outside the blue box and go beyond recycling basics. Just before we started the call, I was talking a little bit about composting. That's another thing I really want to encourage people. It doesn't go in a blue box right now. We don't have any food composting programs that I'm aware of here in Northwest Indiana, but you can, as a home composter, just think about doing it inside your house. You can do this all year long with something called vermicomposting, or that's composting with worms. That's something that's very near and dear to my heart. Strange, I know. I actually really do enjoy it, and you make some great fertilizer for your garden. You can find out more about that workshop that will be held on Sunday, September 8th. That will be held in Westville at Native Roots Farm, 3 o'clock p.m., and you can find out details about that on our event calendar, 219greenconnect.com/calendar. Go to September 8th and you'll get full details. So we're almost at the end of our time. I want to thank you again for joining us. You have been listening to another episode of 219greenconnect.com. So thank you, Neil, and get thinking outside the blue box.
Thank you, Kathy.